Hey everybody, welcome back to another JBoz Gaming video. This is your host JBoz, and today we're going to talk about a map called Port. Let's get into it. Okay, so Port, just like all the other maps, have three game modes. There's Standard Battle, Encounter Battle, and Team Destruction. First, I want to apologize because the old map of Port that I have is not it's not very accurate. And so I did go in and actually grab a screenshot out of the game so that you guys could see within what we're showing you today here, what port actually looks like today versus using an old map where it has train tracks and trains in the middle, and you just would be like, what is this map? So I decided to use a newer updated version, so it's not as graphically, I don't think, as pleasing as what I've shown you in the past, but it'll get the job done. So we'll kind of take a look at this today and make sure that we have what we need. And so with that being said, let me scroll down here and just get it all on the same window here. There we go. That's good enough. Like we were talking about game mode. So the encounter battle plays pretty much the same as a standard battle. There's really not a lot of difference. You might want to. It just makes some of the more defensive points even more important because you'll be able to hit the cap circle if they do try to cap out. But in general, the encounter battle, where the white flag is placed, which is in the center of the map, is so open that it is extremely hard to cap on port, and not really pretty much have killed all of the enemy. So you don't normally cap out on port. But the actual gameplay is pretty much the same. Now, what I will say is team destruction is a little bit different because, as in any team destruction, you can decide to go one direction as a team, and you should be able to dominate because typically teams divide their forces, and so if you all go in one direction, you typically win team destructions, and that's true on port. If you all head in the same direction, you'll be able to have a lot of success. All right, so let's get into standard battle and how that's played. For today, I've chosen the green being in kind of the city section, if you will, of the southern portion of the map, and red being in the northeastern corner of the map. And so the cap circles in standard battle will always be this juxtaposing opposite kind of corner, but it might be a different color, obviously. Okay, so let's talk about our routes of attack to the opposing cap circle. So if we start with our green options here, there's various ways to go through the city in order to get out. And once you get out into the what I'll call this open hilly middle area, you can really go any way that you so choose. But in general, the map plays this way. There is an attack route, kind of through the town, if you will, and off to the back side of the map, through or around this back highway, and you can kind of even keep going to the back corner, or you can cut through here and kind of take this back route, if you will, to the enemy cap. All right. There's obviously other ways that you can get to this team's cap. One of them is going through the front part of your city, and you could either take the highway to get over to the other side, which I do not recommend, but you can certainly do that, or you can just stay off the highway, traversing along the highway, even underneath the highway, and going to the cap. And so, there's just those different ways. And then there's multiple various ways off of this. So what I'll say is, and I kind of want to draw this area is all what I consider open territory where you can be hit by arty from either side, really, and you are exposed. So on port is a map where you have to be very, very map aware, or you can easily get outflanked. Typically, you would have these two options. There's offshoots. A third option is to make your way down the back of the warehouses and make your way over to the enemy cap. And again, you can go all the way to the middle and so on, right? There's just various ways you can stream through these towns and warehouses and so on. But in general, I call this the main warehouse row because there's kind of big warehouses that separate the map from the north to the south. And if you get behind these warehouses too soon and they have green defenders in the city, I'm sorry, red defenders in the city and you're green and attacking, you can be easily eliminated. So this warehouse is kind of an early point that you need to slow down. You can't just keep going until you actually know where the enemy is. And then I call it the dunes area. They call it the waste overflow on the official map. But there's kind of sandy, kind of coal hills. I don't know what they call them here, but this is a very hilly, again, open area. This is an open area here where arty can hit you. There are some pipes to hide behind and so on. This is also open area here, back here. So this is all open area really through this part of the middle part of the map. So as you can imagine, teams are going to take defensive positions in different places. So let's talk about that because the main route of attack is for green these directions, right? Green can push through the hilly area and around this way. This is not typical because usually red will send defenders over here. And that's also true of green sending defenders over here. And so you're going to always encounter some kind of resistance. And again, because this is so open, you would be subject to arty fire as you're trying to traverse through the waste overflow and through the open area to get across to the warehouses. Where the green team advancing on this flank are a little more covered. There's under the highway and there are some major hills here that kind of protect you from arty fire a little bit that allow you to traverse this area with not as much risk, and that's why generally green's attack is going to come from either the middle part of the map or some combination of coming around to the left, pushing up in the front of the warehouses, or behind the warehouses, or going all the way to the back A line of the map. All right. So, and red is somewhat similar in that red, though, will tend to go over to, at least, to set up defense, over to this way and can come through this direction, obviously, to go to the green's cap. So that's definitely a red attack. Another approach is either on the highway or by the highway, literally coming down this direction and getting into the city. And again, there can be multiple ways, obviously, through the city, right? I'm not going to draw every single line around every single building, but you get it. And then, of course, there are the back roads to get to the green cap, which involves being over on the west flank. And again, this can be over the road, beside the road, under the road, but you're still making your way on the back side to the enemy's cap. Okay. Now, there's also they too also can go through the middle of the map and make their way in any combination heretofore or any way that you see them to be able to go through the cities. Okay, so the red team, because they're closer to this side of the warehouse, will have opportunity to push into these positions to defend this portion of the city sooner than the green team. And the same is true. They'll have defenders over here. They'll have defenders in this back part of the city, and they'll be pushing people down this kind of main road behind the warehouses to shoot or snipe into the open areas and try to get advantage so they can come around and take the west flank. Green pretty much will have defenders that push to the front of the city to shoot any waste overflow attack that might be coming from the red. And if there's, if they have the numbers, they might push into the overflow and try to attack this cap circle from the right side. All right. So basically, they have the same lines of attack, but generally, red, it's easier for them to push this side. Green, it's generally easier for them to push this side, even though they will eventually reach red resistance. And the same is true of green. They'll eventually reach red resistance over here. And red will also generally reach green resistance from this side. So the map is fairly balanced, but a lot of people don't know how to play this map because what they try to do is they try to push these attack routes too soon, and that's a theme. If you've been listening to my other map strategies, it's about controlled aggression. It's not about just unbridled aggression. And so with over-aggression, what happens is the green team gets behind these warehouses too soon, not really knowing where the bulk force of the enemy is, and all of a sudden they get wiped out because they encounter a huge red presence. So you got to be smart about how you play. You got to know where the enemy is in order to take opportunities of attack. And so that's why lights and mediums are going to be important in trying to determine where the enemy is, while tank destroyers and heavies will try to hold down different lines of attack to your cap and try to stay arty safe. So let's start with arty. Let's talk about where they most likely will be located. Generally, arties are going to be right around the caps. Sometimes they're either right on the cap or very close. Sometimes they move into this position over here or somewhere down this line, right? They're right in here somewhere. Sometimes they take position, especially late game, and they're trying to hide. They'll hide behind these and in these warehouses. But generally, to fire at the enemy, they're setting out in the open. They're sitting around their cap somewhere, and getting shots on the enemy. So the red arty position is going to be back behind their cap circle in this area, while the green arty position is a little more precarious in the sense that if they start on this spawn point, they may sit behind the cap here, kind of hang around in this area, or if they spawn more over in this area, or choose to go further into this area, there's breakable structures over here, and so they'll take up positions over here to try to get shots on the enemy positions. They hide sometimes here, can't fire from there, but they can shotgun people. And then, of course, they might even try to get on the corner here to shotgun people coming to kill them at the end of the battle. This is water, and so if you fall off the edge here, you will die at any point. You need to stay out of the water. But that is what arties sometimes do, is kill themselves by just driving themselves off into the water at the end of a match. Why? I don't know, but they do it. Don't care. All right, so let's see. So that's artillery. Tank destroyers, really any warehouse, any building is a pretty good defensive position. But generally, you want to make sure that you have some tank destroyers. If you're the red team, if you're the red team, you want them aligned over here and positioned to fire into the middle, into the open areas as best you can, into or at highway. Anybody trying to traverse the highway, you might move tank destroyers over here into the dunes area to get shots on folks that are coming up to defend their flank and their side of the city. So you might have, obviously red tank destroyers that are fast move into these really pushed up positions. And of course, you're going to have tank destroyers kind of taking positions along these warehouses to try to hold, obviously, this line of attack. You might have some tank destroyers, especially fast tank destroyers, try to get up and and hold these positions so that the greenies don't push around any further into the city and jeopardize the artillery. Heavies generally can set in the same places, and they do need to shore up certain lines to protect and hold down lines of attack. Um, when we're talking about already safe, typically if you're behind the warehouses, you're pretty much already safe, though arties can hit you if you're not behind a structure. Generally, it's harder for them to hit you anytime you're in a city. So the green arties will have trouble hitting folks that are in this northern city, but they're behind structure. So if you're just sitting out in the open, kind of in the city, then that makes you much easier to lay a shell in on your head if you're not behind some structure that's going to block arty fire. So just know that this is a fairly safe area from arty fire, but they can hit you over here. So you do need to cover up and get behind a structure at all times. And the reverse is true. If you're within the city over here, you're even more protected just because this is more densely packed in area. And so it's even harder, but arty can hit you if you're not covered up and behind a building. So the red arty can hit into the city here as well, just a little bit harder. Now, open areas are not arty safe. Arty can hit you pretty much anywhere in these areas for the most part. There's places to cover up. Obviously, ridge lines of hills are always a good idea, but that's not going to necessarily protect you from arties. So this is kind of arty danger zones, is in these middle areas. Not completely arty safe, but safer. Let's put it that way. And same here. Not arty safe, but safer. So in total, this is a map that arties can have a good game on. Now, I think a lot of arty players get frustrated because they're focused on one player and he's doing a good job covering up in the city, and they kind of neglect all the other players that may be sitting out into the open. So that's artillery, tank destroyers and heavies. Lights and mediums, I inevitably see a light or sometimes even the arty try to run across the bridge. And they do this to get spots for folks that might be shooting into the middle. They also are trying to determine where the enemy's position is and how many tanks are on a given flank, which is not a bad idea. But when you up on the bridge, everybody that's in these open areas is going to take a shot at you, and typically that's going to bleed you of your hit points, if not your full life, if you're not completely lucky. So just know that going up on these cross bridges here, which are located here and here, are not awesome. Okay, so you can do it at your own peril. There are two bridges back here that are a bit staggered, and you will find that arties, especially the south spawn arties, will try to get up, especially higher tier. They'll try to get up here, and then they have better viewpoints on folks across the map and into the warehouses then, because they have to kind of elevate themselves over this hill, and these bridges do a good job of that. Now, as you can see, this kind of area here that I'm kind of drawing, in fact, I'll use my yellow because that usually indicates, kind of depth or height on the map. As you can see, this is a bit of a ridge line because everything above this is higher and everything that's below this is lower. So when you're setting up here in these hills, you're setting up a little bit higher than what you would be sitting down here on the road. And so there is some elevation to this middle area that provides some cover from at least direct fire tanks like tank destroyers and others. But for the most part, arty can hit anything in this middle section, so it's pretty open. Okay, so that's arties, light, heavies, and tank destroyers. Let's kind of get into lights and mediums. Lights and mediums are going to try to poke and prod as best they can each one of these flanks. So you might see a lot of people run to this side. You might see people run into the middle, try to spot, and then kind of back away. as soon as they've located the enemy. You'll see light tanks move over here, try to assess what's the strength of the defense in the eastern side of the city. So that the red will push over here, try to spot as many green tanks that are taking up defense on the eastern side to determine their strength, because they might be able to rush them by sending a lot of tanks from both these two flanks and overwhelm them and try to take the green cap by overrunning this flank. So let's talk specific areas that a light or medium would set up. In this case, you're going to have potentially red, light tanks in these areas behind these hills, trying to snipe and spot the green tanks that are usually taking up defensive positions in the city here, in various locations. And sometimes there's people here, and sometimes these greenies push up too far and they're exposed, but they still sit out here and try to shoot and snipe the red tanks. So just knowing that there's going to be enemy over here, I would not, as a green defender, push up too far. I'd always have a building as a defensive point between me and the east side of the map. And then also kind of this area, kind of this section right in here is kind of a danger zone in that there's not any cover in here. So this is a destructible building. So once this is destroyed, there's really nowhere to sit that you can't be hit from the eastern flank. So as a green team, you want to make sure that you're taking up defensive positions more back in the city, and just pulling up and spotting and then falling back. You don't want to get in a shooting contest, you being in this position and red tank somewhere in the waste overflow area, because they're going to win that fight almost every time. And then, of course, light and medium tanks will move up into these hills in the middle to try to spot the enemy and where they're located behind the warehouse. Now, once you know that you can actually push this flank, then you want to push as a group, being greenies that is, push as a group around this flank so that you can take on whatever enemies are trying to defend this attack point. But I call it's kind of like if you get behind these warehouses, if the greenies push up too soon, get behind these warehouses, then you will get in, again, a multiple crossfire situation where they'll have pushed tanks around the side of the warehouse. They'll still have tanks over here. And all of a sudden, you're a greenie sitting over here, right? Nope, that's not green. You're a greenie that's pushed to the other side of the warehouse, and now they've ran maybe a tank to this other side. Sorry, that should be red. They've ran a tank to this other side, and they still have their tank destroyers or heavies sitting back here. So now you're getting sniped from different directions. So that's not good. Sometimes the red team will have a fast tank that pushes up on the back side of this road. They won't come all the way up, but he can also back snipe you from here by sitting on the road, right, and protecting this, what I call, back line of the warehouses. Now, if you flip this around, this is the back line of the warehouses for the red team, and the same is true of the green team. They could have tank destroyers up here on these bridges. They could have people on this road, maybe not all the way up on the top, but just waiting for folks to kind of pull around so that they can pull up and snipe at their rears because they've pushed too far past the warehouses. So the warehouses are kind of the last line of defense before you're committing to rush into the open and across the map till you get to more cover. And so you really want to make sure that you have good map control before you just commit to the other side of a warehouse, because you got to know that if you're kind of moving to the other side of the warehouse, then you're going to be exposed to counterfire that could be setting, somewhere defensively, holding those attack points. So port is, a pretty straightforward map the way it plays. But a lot of people struggle with it because you really need to have good map awareness. It's very easy to get yourself in a cross fire position where you have multiple enemies being able to fire you at you at the same time. And so that's why mediums and light tanks seem to sometimes struggle with this map. But in general, it's a very good map for mediums and lights because you can get a lot of spotting, and you can also get a lot of direct damage just feeling out that enemy. But this map is about controlled aggression. You really need to be patient, really know and feel out the enemy and understand which flank is the weakest to attack, and then overwhelm that flank. And generally, that's going to come from either the back line here, the C3 area to C2 area, and then obviously over here the F0 to F9 where you can maybe push finally through to get to the red cap, and vice versa. The red is going to stay over here, keep probing and prodding and shooting until they've got as many people dead or they have the numbers to push into the city, or at least push up to the next level, and that's that first defensive into the eastern side of the city for their attack. And the same is true here. They're going to continue to push and prod and try to get as many people killed as they can on the opposite side of this warehouse line, if you will, until they have reaches such a point that they outnumber the enemy, and then you'll see an assault where it's trying to overwhelm the enemy, the green defenses from this side. It might come from this direction. It may come through these latter stages of the warehouse, but it's generally going to come from this area, and it's going to come from behind the warehouse to the front of the warehouse, and then traverse into the city. Now, when you're in the middle and you are dealing in a cap circle situation, you tend to there are bushes and other things to if you have concealment to take cover in, but generally this middle area is very open. It's very hard to play with, and you really have to be skilled at really watching your mini map to really know whether these tanks are pushing up. You're going to be exposed, and you got to get behind this hill, or you can push up and shoot down this little alley between the warehouses and hit their tanks. Many times I've seen green tanks, for example, anybody that spawns in the northwest, come up here and set, which is not bad to get early spotting, but they just kind of sit there and they hang out, and eventually the red team pushes these kind of the back warehouse line, and all of a sudden now they're taking shots from here, and they've pushed around and up through the warehouse line, and they've got people in a multiple crossfire. So generally speaking, light tanks will keep moving and keep probing the enemy. And as I kind of tell folks that I play with or platoon with, if we're in the middle, then we don't want people getting behind us. Meaning that if the red team, let's say we're the green team, and the red team is pushing up behind the back line of the warehouse or even in the back row, then we'll get out of the middle and push back to this side to shore up the defenses to hold them from pushing around. You don't want to let any red team sweep this flank, because then you're not only out in the open, but you're also exposed from multiple angles of being shot. Okay, and the reverse is true of the red team. You really don't want the greenies pushing up into the waste overflow. Otherwise, you're getting exposed from the sides if you're trying to snipe into the middle and into the town over here. And you want to keep the greenies from pushing down or coming around and pushing around the back of the warehouse, because as soon as they do that, that's really starting to put pressure on your cap circle, and these people will kind of hedge their bets, and they'll have to get into position to try to hold against them trying to cap out. So you want to make sure that you do your best to align your team in a way that protects each one of these attack routes, but also continues to put pressure and prod forward as to how many tanks they really have and whether you can overwhelm a flank and actually win the game. All right. We've covered artillery, we've covered tank destroyers, we've covered heavy tanks, and we've covered light and medium tanks. So I think we've kind of covered the tanks. Now, what I will say as a final thought is in a team destruction, and this happens a lot on port when I'm in a team destruction, is a lot of folks tend to go and kind of take up their normal defensive positions as if it's an encounter battle or standard battle. And maybe that's because an encounter battle plays pretty much like a standard battle on this map. But team destruction, you really need to be more together than not, and you should push one of these outer flanks so that you overwhelm the enemy. Whether the red team's pushing hard through the waste overflow into the eastern side of the city because they have numbers, because they have their whole team, they tend to do that. Where if the green team had split their forces, let's say 7 or 8 tanks here, 7 or 8 tanks over here, well, guess what? You've got a 15 on 7, 15 on 8 situation, and so you should be able to win that pretty easily. Again, team destruction for the green team. If you can overwhelm the enemy and push this way, it's fine. But what people, I guess, just don't realize is there's nothing to protect over here. So you don't really care if you're the green team pushing this 1-2 AB line, the red team comes in and takes your side of the map or that city, because it just doesn't matter if you're pushing on around into their city. And let's assume that both teams go together and they just push their corresponding flanks. Well, what you'll have is kind of a chase game where you're kind of chasing one another around the map, and there's nobody that can cap out. The caps don't matter, and now it's a point of who has maybe the ability to catch the other team, or you decide to turn around as a team and then face the enemy head on as they come around. And usually, if you do that, let's say the red team was all together, they pushed this 0-9 flank, and the green team was all together and they pushed this 1-2 flank. Well, you'd have the team shift basically into the opposite quarters still, but now you have to make a decision. Do you continue to go as a team, or do you leave some defensive presence? And so if, let's say you're the green team, and instead of pushing on into the city, let's say you send some tanks to push in and catch their rear, light tanks and medium tanks like that, but you reposition your tanks because this is pretty defensible, and they've got to come up through open area to even get you, then you can set up kind of a trap for them and counterattack them and stop the kind of circular flow. But generally, team destruction is a game that is best spent with as many as your allies as you can going in the same direction, pushing the same way, and then you can make decisions based on how the game is unfolding and whether people really did that or not, and countering what you find the enemy to be doing as well. All right, that's it for port. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. If this video was helpful, please hit that like button. And of course, if we've earned your trust and you like what we're doing here at JBoz Gaming, hit that subscribe button. And then ring the bell for notifications when I upload the next video. Good luck, guys. We'll see you in the next battle.